What is good, YouTube? It's your boy, about to flex the dick on these hoes and just stunt on the kid. You know what it is. You read the title, and this is something I thought I would never do on YouTube because this is one of my most personal collections and not something that I thought that, frankly, I would ever share. And you might be saying, that's kind of fucking weird. Why? So let me provide a little bit of backstory, a little bit of context before I get into this video. And I want to start by saying that it's a real fucking head trip for me to kind of sit back and look at the current state of video games. In fact, it blows my fucking mind because as a kid, I would say I grew up lower middle class to low class, depending on the year. You know, my family had better years than other years. But me and my circle of friends and my family, to us, video games were two things. They were an experience and they were an escape. And at some points they were also, time to bond with family and friends as well. But I say that because I don't view video games as something for privileged people. I always thought video games kind of catered to poor people. And I know that video games were expensive. And the entry price was expensive, but it was like you tried to get good grades and be good, and so when Christmas came, you could beg your mom for that console and maybe you'd get it, and that console would be good for a few years, and maybe the following Christmas or on your birthday, if you were good, you might get a game for that console. And then when you have 2 or 3 games, you can start to borrow games from your friends and kind of trade them around. Or I remember it was $3.25 to rent a Nintendo game from the grocery store on my block for the week. And I mean, that was just, once you had your console, it was kind of like getting over the hurdle and you were ready to do it. And, that was kind of our escape from the struggle and a way for us to, have some experience that we might not have while, rich kids would fucking go on vacations with their family or go to, maybe a summer camp to play sports or something. I remember some of the kids that I was friends with that were like richer kids would go to this basketball camp every year, and I thought that, how fucking cool would that be? So, me, instead of going to basketball camp, I played NBA Jam with my friend on the block. Or maybe other kids had, cottages like in the woods or on a lake or something, and I would play an RPG to kind of have that rural kind of adventure experience. That was my escape. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's kind of a head trip for me to see people get on YouTube and kind of parade these really expensive games or libraries of games or collections of games or even pickup videos. My mind is blown. I'm like, where do these people get this money? How do these people afford these things? Because I see people my age, younger, older, that just have this incredible shit, and I just think to myself, they must be spending so much money on video games. How do they do it? And when did video games become something that was for rich kids? Because I mean, no offense to anybody, I'm not saying that if you have money, it makes you a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. A lot of people work really, really hard to get to the things they have, and I have nothing but respect and admiration for those people. But I see a lot of people on YouTube that really just, make me feel inadequate. I'm like, wow, like I can't compete with this collection. It's amazing. So I don't try and compete. And I just buy the games that I love, I'm going to play, and I really want. I don't just buy stuff to buy stuff. And I think that really shows in my Super Nintendo collection because it's very, very calculated. I made the conscientious decision to start collecting Super Nintendo games, specifically complete and box Super Nintendo games, about 3 years ago, and I've had some good luck with it, and I've had some, instances where I've gotten very, very lucky and gotten some great deals, but that comes back to being patient and knowing what I wanted and not just buying stuff to buy it or because I see it and I can buy it. I waited for the games that I wanted for a price that wasn't going to fucking cause my wife to leave me. So, that said, this is one of my most personal collections because, these games are very, very expensive, and it's so hard to collect for the Super Nintendo now that, a lot of thought has gone into these games. And for the most part, I have most of the Super Nintendo games that I really, really want, with the exception of, like, the Kirby games, I would love to get a copy of Evo, but that's just crazy. And a few others. My Super Nintendo collection is really where I want it to be. And I don't see myself getting many more Super Nintendo games because at this point I'm kind of priced out of the market. So unless I have some really good luck, probably not going to happen. So that's my backstory and kind of the reason I've never shared my Super Nintendo collection, because it's something that I'm humbled to have. I'm really, really grateful for, and I definitely don't take it for granted. And I don't want anybody to think that the reason I own these games is to parade them in front of a camera, because that's not the truth at all. These are all very, very personal games, and I am very, very lucky to have them. It's not like the Wii or the PlayStation 3 or the PS2 where the games are so cheap, you can take risks, you can check out a game, and if it sucks, oh well, because it was $4 or $5. Like these games are, they're expensive, so I had to be very calculated with how I spent my money and when I spent my money. So with all that bullshit out of the way, if you sat through that 6-minute introduction, give yourself a little pat on the back, maybe make a sandwich, whatever. This is probably about as sentimental and soft and serious as you'll ever see me, because I'm not joking when I say how much respect I have for these games, how much respect I have for the medium of video gaming, and how much potential trouble video games saved me from as a kid, from instead of running the streets, maybe sinking a few more hours into that game or something. You know what I mean? So it's just I'm lucky to have these games that I have. So here's my Super Nintendo collection. You can pretty much take everything I just said and throw it away, because the first 3 games I'm about to show are 3 sports games that I don't even want. These were actually, I'm kidding about throwing away. I'm dead serious about all that shit I said. But these 3 games are, just something my friend gave me. He had them. I thought maybe I'd use them as donor cards if I ever started to make reproductions. So 3 sports games. And again, I am moving, so here's the box. Everything's going into the box. Some of these I might put bubble wrap on at some point, but you're going to see me bending down a lot to put the games in the box. Some of these I'm kind of going to go through fast, and some of them I'm going to go through slow, because since it is such a small collection, I can kind of talk about the games and why I decided to buy them a little more. First is a couple of games that I got because I was really into first-person dungeon crawlers. Like the Dark Spire was one that got me really into the genre, and Etrian Odyssey. So I wanted to go back and kind of check out some of the older ones, but even the Dark Spire, as much as it's an old school style first-person dungeon crawler, it has a lot of the amenities and comforts of a modern RPG, just kind of wrapped up in, the finish of an old school RPG. Some of these really old school first-person dungeon crawlers are pretty archaic, and that is the case with, if I can fucking find them, what do I do with them? Here we go. With these 2 games, and that is Dungeons & Dragons Eye of the Beholder and Wizardry 5. So both these games I got because I wanted to experience some old school FPS dungeon crawlers, and I gotta say, they didn't really hold my attention that well, but they were just a couple bucks each, so this is something that was kind of like an experiment, but a very cheap experiment, and I am happy to have both these games. I'm definitely more of a fan of Wizardry than the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons games, but cool to have nonetheless, just not something I see myself playing much more of, if ever. Next, again, is a couple shooters that are really cheap that I got just because they are really cheap, and I love playing shooters, even if they're not the best shooters. And that is Super R-Type, which is, not the best R-Type game, and super common and super cheap, but still, a fun game nonetheless. And Thunder Spirits, which is actually part of the Thunder Force game. And fuck Carrie for writing your name on here. I've tried everything to get this off. If anybody has, like, grandma's secret elixir for getting fucking markers off games, hit me up, because I've tried it all. But yeah, Thunder Spirits, it's no Thunder Force or Lightning Force. It's not nearly as good or on par with its, older, more popular brothers and sisters. But it is still fun, and this was something that was like a throw-in on a deal that I made a couple years ago. So, not something that I seeked out, but something that, was given to me, and I decided to keep because again, it is a shooter. Next, both these games are actually my wife's games. First, we have Capcom's Aladdin, and this is, it's a fun game. It's something she was more nostalgic about and wanted in the collection. Personally, I prefer Aladdin on the Genesis, but she really likes this game, so it's hers, and I'm happy that she has it and can play it. And one of the Super Nintendos that we have hooked up on like the main TV is actually her Super Nintendo from when she was a kid. So shout out to my wife for not only keeping her Super Nintendo for that long, but taking such good care of it. It's not even yellowed. It still works perfect. She's got 2 controllers, and she still has this game from when she was a kid as well, and that is Super Mario All-Stars. So one of the few Mario games in my collection, well, our collection, I guess, but it is a really good one to have. So yeah, shout out to her for taking such good care of this. I mean, it looks great. So I think this was actually the pack-in with her Super Nintendo. She said that she used to have, I think, Clay Fighter, Street Fighter 2, and Aladdin as well, but the only one that she was able to hold on to through college and moving from apartments and, growing up was this one. So really cool to have this in the collection. Next is a game that the homie McFly sent me, an awesome game and one that we play a lot in my house. Super fun game. A lot of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo are, games that you can either play co-op or versus mode. It's just such a great system for, spending time with other people in the same room. It's awesome. It's almost like magical, in my opinion, the things that the Super Nintendo did for video gaming. It's kind of incredible. But anyway, F-Zero, such a fun game. This is kind of where it all started. And I love the F-Zero games, especially on the GameCube. That's my favorite one. But this game gets a lot of play. It's just a great game to pick up and play for, a couple minutes or a couple hours. Awesome. And one of my favorite games on the system, UN Squadron. Awesome fucking shooter. I still can't believe this game isn't more popular. I think its cover art was detrimental because it makes it look like some kind of boring flight simulator or Air Force game or something. But it's actually a very solid anime-influenced shooter. It has, some light RPG elements, even some story elements. One of the things I like most about this game is you have a life bar, so no one-hit kills, which is awesome. And it's a lot of fun and definitely does some things differently and takes some risk, and for the most part definitely succeeds. And this was one of the games that was really high on my wants list, but every time I'd come across a copy of this game at a store, it was really cheap, but they were always just really beat up. Like the labels were like coming off or worn out, which I think is a testament to how good and playable this game was, because the people that actually had it seemed like they played the fuck out of it, judging by all the labels I've come across. This I actually found at a garage sale, which was awesome because I've been looking for it forever and only ever finding really shitty copies. Hopefully I am upgrading this to a box copy, but there was a snag in that I need to take some time and figure out. But, hopefully soon I'll be having a box copy of this game and, kind of passing this along to somebody else at some point. Next is ActRaiser. Actually, this is the last Super Nintendo game that I have. And here's the box for it, but it's not in the box because I was playing it last month and I haven't put it back in the box yet. I actually finished it last month, and yeah, it's good. I really think I remembered something a little bit different than what I got. I knew what the game was. I'd played it briefly before, and I just think the simulation, it's like a simulation action RPG, like side-scrolling, and just really kind of this big mashup. But the simulation parts, I just think didn't really age that well in my opinion, and I felt like the menu system was just really, really unintuitive and not nice to navigate. I'm not sure if 2 fixes that or not. I really can't remember. It's been so long since I've played that game, and I really haven't played much of it to begin with. But yeah, this game is definitely flawed, but I can see why people do have such nostalgia for it. Just personally, I don't feel like it aged that well. So yeah, ActRaiser. Next is my only Super Famicom game, and that is Breath of Fire. In this awesome box. I love these boxes. It reminds me of like old VHS boxes, and it has this, great artwork on it. I especially love this picture right here. So yeah, Breath of Fire 2, this was sent to me by a friend. Shout outs to that individual. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hopefully what I plan to do with this game is when I have a little extra dough is send it out and have the English patch put onto it so I can play it, because I've still never played Breath of Fire 2, and I'm really excited to try it because I love Breath of Fire 3 and 4. Breath of Fire 1, not so much, but I'll talk more about that later. Next, a couple more loose games. Also, shout out to my friend that gave me these cool blue cases. He sold off most of his collection and some of the stuff that he had left over. He came over one day and just gave me, including these cool blue cases. But anyway, Ramna 1/2. Shout out to Big Chuck, and shout out to you if you know who Big Chuck is. That guy in his greasy ass fucking ponytail. I can still smell his funk and fucking scumminess. But I think I got most of the scumminess off the games. If you don't know who Big Chuck is, you're really not missing out. But Ramna 1/2. At one time, this was my most wanted Super Nintendo game. I could not find it anywhere, just because I'm a huge fan of the anime. It's actually just a very simple 2D fighter, kind of like a Street Fighter 2 knockoff, but not nearly as in depth or as good. The controls aren't the best either, but it's fun. And as a Ramna fan, it is pretty cool to be able to play with all the different characters. And the subtitle is Hard Battle. There was actually a Ramna RPG that came out on the Super Famicom, but it never was released in North America. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get a boxed Famicom copy of that and have it English patched if an English patch exists. I think it does, but I'm not 100%. But this is a fun game to mess around with friends. Not something you really want to play by yourself. Next game in this blue box is a game that was one of really high up on my Super Nintendo to get list, and that is Nosferatu, which is a really, really interesting game. It's kind of like a teenage slasher B-movie type vibe to it that plays like Prince of Persia on the Super Nintendo. Really good game, great controls, a super in-depth and deceptively deep battle system, or like combo system for fighting that is a lot of fun. Really good animations and like the jumping and the fighting and all that. Very cool. Great level design. The music kind of is grating, and the more I play the game, the less I like the music. But overall, I think this is a really cool and even kind of corny, but like corny in a good way. Like the story is just so cheesy. It's awesome. And much lighter tone than this label would have you believe, but phenomenal game. Really happy to have this. I actually got this at a church rummage sale, which was awesome because it was a game that I really wanted, and being able to find it at a rummage sale was cool because it not only did it not cost me an arm and a leg, but the money actually went towards the community. It was the church down the street from me, so that money went back into the community. So I gave the seller 2 times what they were asking, because that, even at that, it was still a steal. So really, really happy to get this, and really happy that I waited and wasn't hasty about this, because when I do see this game, it seems like it's really, really overpriced. But very, very playable game. Let's see, next is a game that in the grand scheme of things, I am just shocked at how cheap it is, and that is Illusion of Gaia. And shout outs to the Lost Gamer for making me this really cool case. He made me a few others that I'll show too. So Illusion of Gaia, great RPG, and for some reason, this RPG just didn't have the same trajectory as other RPGs on the system. It just, it's still really cheap. You can get this game for like $15 to $20, which is a great price for a good Super Nintendo game. And to think about it, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is about the same price as this game, and this game is vastly superior. One of my favorite RPGs on the system, and just a great RPG all around. So, kind of interesting that this game is so cheap still. It's just kind of weird. There must just be hundreds of thousands of these things out there, but even like the pack-in Mario games that there's way more of those out there are going for more than this game, but I'm sure those are much more popular. But yeah, if you're looking for a really cheap entry-level game to get on the Super Nintendo, like say you want a great RPG and you don't want to spend a lot of money, Illusion of Gaia, man. Crazy that this game is as cheap as it is considering what a quality title it is. So highly, highly recommended. Great game. And that was another game that was really high on the list of games to get. This next game, it was really high on the list of games to get, but actually for the Genesis. This isn't a game that I ever intended to get on the Super Nintendo, but I came across a complete in-box copy for such a good deal, I just decided to say, fuck it, I'm going to get it on the Super Nintendo despite really wanting it on the Genesis, and that is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. So this game is awesome. Such a fun game to play, two-player, co-op, it's a blast. It's really difficult once you get to stage like 30, 35. It starts to get really, really hard. There's 55 stages total, as you can see from the thing there. I've never seen the ending to this game. I've never beat the game, and I've never YouTubed the ending because I'm confident that one day I will be able to finish this game. I've gotten really close, and I've tried my best to figure out a way to really take advantage of the password system, but even then it kind of you don't get to like take your like upgraded weapons and stuff with you when you use the save file. If I remember correctly, I think that was the problem that we were running into, so it's kind of like you got to beat it all at once. But I do plan to one day get the Retron 5, so maybe being able to implement save states into this game will make it a little easier to beat, because I really, really want to beat this game, and I am confident that one day I'll be able to do it. Awesome game, and a nice surprise, for a game that I was like hell-bent on getting on the Genesis, kind of settled for the Super Nintendo version, but it worked out pretty well because it plays great. And I've still never seen a CIB copy on the Genesis locally, because I've gotten, for the most part, all of these games locally, except for, one that I'll talk about later. Next is a game that is just a fucking marvel of sprite work and art style, in my opinion, and a great mashup of genres as well, and that is The Legend of the Mystical Ninja. So this is another one that was really high on the list when I started collecting Super Nintendo games. I knew this was a game that I wanted to have because I have such fond memories of playing this at my friend's house. Honestly, it was like Konami was putting magic on my television set. I remember when I would play this game at my friends who had this house, it was like I was witnessing a fucking miracle on TV. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I will never forget the first time I saw the animation of the fish that is kind of flopping on the ground on the first stage. I just thought that it was so funny and so cool. I just never got that image out of my head, and this was always a game I wanted to go back and get. And when I started to actually go back and collect Super Nintendo games, I could not remember what the name of it was, so I had to look up, like Super Nintendo best of videos until I found it, because I just couldn't remember what it was called. And as soon as I saw that fish in like a clip of the video, I was like, that's it, that's that fucking fish. So really happy to have this awesome game, highly recommended. I'm also a big fan of the other Goemon games, or at least the one that I have on the Nintendo 64. That's a lot of fun. There's two on the Nintendo 64. I only have one of them. I hope to get the other one day. And I believe there was some Game Boy games as well that I have never played. But awesome game, highly recommended. And I haven't checked, prices on a lot of Super Nintendo games in a long time, because I'm not honestly in the market for them. But last time I checked, this game is still really inexpensive. Not inexpensive. It was like $20 game, which is kind of expensive, but definitely worth $20 if it's still going for that. I don't really know, but awesome game, highly recommended. Okay, next is Breath of Fire. So Breath of Fire, man, Capcom and Square, when they put this out, I think they had some seeds of brilliance, but really this game just does not hold up well, in my opinion. It is just, in 2015, to go back to the first Breath of Fire is kind of a chore, and I really would probably tell people to stay away from this game if you want to get into the Breath of Fire games and just go right to 3 and 4 on the PlayStation 1 because they are so much more playable than this game. And from what I can remember about this game is the encounter rate is just fucking crazy. And it's still pretty bad on the PlayStation 1, but this was just out of control. And there's just so much grinding, and it just really wasn't that fun. So yeah, not the biggest fan of the first Breath of Fire, but I love Breath of Fire 3 and 4, and I can't really say anything about 2 because I've yet to play it, but I would probably say to stay away from this game unless, you know, you have nostalgia for it, or you're just crazy like me and you really wanted it. Like, this is a game that I really wanted, but then when I, you know, really played it, I was kind of disappointed. At first I thought it was great, but then as I played it, I was like, yeah, this really isn't that fun. Let's see, what's next? Next is a game that was really ahead of its time as far as trying new things, and that is Secret of Mana. And the reason I say Secret of Mana was ahead of its time and is an interesting game because it's a multiplayer RPG, and I'd never been exposed to a multiplayer RPG before Secret of Mana, except for a really underrated Nintendo game called Little Ninja Brothers, which is really cool. 2-player RPG on the NES that I would, you know, recommend you check out if you've never heard of it. But Secret of Mana, really cool, man. Definitely an interesting game. And shout-outs to Oricon for hooking me up. He sold me this copy. It was actually his brother-in-law's. This is the only Super Nintendo game that I haven't bought, like, locally or in person. And yeah, really, he gave me a great deal on it, which is awesome. So thanks again, dude. And this was, like, mint condition, 100% complete. All the inserts, everything. So, yeah, Oricon, recommended seller. As far as the game, it's got great music, it plays well, it's cool that it's a multiplayer RPG, and I would say it's one of my, you know, top 5 Super Nintendo RPGs, probably one of my top 10 RPGs of all time, but something about it, if you were going to play this for the first time in 2015, you'd probably be a little bit underwhelmed and maybe think it was a little overrated. And for that, I wouldn't blame you, because I think me and a lot of other people that are fans of this game kind of look back at it through, you know, rose-tinted glasses. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just, you know, when people play it for the first time and, like, you know, now, and they say, oh, it's, you know, not what I expected, I get that. You know, I know what you mean. But a game that if you said that about, I would have to disagree, because I fucking love this game, and it is Secret of Mana's, you know, less popular red-headed stepbrother, and that is Secret of Evermore. Not a game that I talk about too often, but this is actually one of my favorite games of all time. This is right up there with, like, Nier and the Kirby games and Rule of Rose and Haunting Ground. I just fucking love this game. And dog companions, man. It seems like if there's a dog companion in the game, it automatically, like, goes up a couple notches on my list, because I love that. But everything about this game is awesome. I remember when I first saw this picture as a kid, it just really freaked me out, and I thought it was awesome. And this was a game that I played when the Nintendo 64 was really popular. I remember playing this game and just absolutely loving it. And when I first made my list of Super Nintendo games that I, you know, when I consciously made that decision to start collecting Super Nintendo games, this game was right at the top of the heap as far as games that I had to get. And this was actually the first CIB Super Nintendo game I ever bought, and was one of the most crucial, personally, for me to be able to obtain. Just check out these graphics on the box. Like, look at that and tell me as a kid you wouldn't see that and have to want to play that game. It's just incredible. So yeah, Secret of Evermore, awesome game. I'm kind of going a little slower than I wanted, so I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. Next is Earthbound. Shoutouts again to Lost Gamer for the case, and shoutouts to Big Chuck for the hookup. If you guys, you know, don't know who Big Chuck is, I don't blame you. It's from a really old video Big Chuck is a real person that I got this game from and a few other games in a game that I'm about to show you for just an insane deal. But Big Chuck was a fucking scumbag. He's probably, you know, somewhere like shooting meth into his dick or smoking crack with a hooker, or maybe he's in prison or even dead for all I know. He's definitely a seedy individual, but I got some killer games from him. So, Earthbound, my copy's a little, you know, dogged up, which is fine because one of the most counterfeited games of all time, so I don't mind having one that, you know, has a little character to it. I've obviously checked the board, and it does check out, but, you know, not a game I mind having a little character because it is so counterfeited, you know. It makes me feel a little better about its authenticity. But anyway, Earthbound, I've talked about Earthbound before. If I get started, I'm going to be talking about it forever. I think Earthbound is a little bit overrated. I think it's a very playable game. It's got great music. It has a lot of character. It's kind of, it's a lot darker than it might appear to be at first, and it has a lot of things going for it. But something about it, after I played it, I was just kind of like, that's it? Like, what's the big deal? And then after I played Mother 3, I was like, wow, Mother 3 just blows Earthbound out of the water. But I'm not going to sit here and have a debate if Earthbound is overrated or not. I think everybody knows where I stand on that. But I will say, again, I've said it before, Earthbound is not as rare as people make it out to be. I remember going into Circuit City and just seeing fucking piles of things. You know, hindsight's 2020. I wish I had bought every fucking one I'd seen on clearance, but, you know, I didn't. And another thing that people say is that, you know, the reason this game is so expensive is because it's so sought after, because it's so good. Well, I think a lot of people forget that, you know, Smash Brothers did big things for this franchise. I think, you know, a lot of people that were playing Melee weren't even alive when Earthbound came out. So I think without Smash Brothers, it wouldn't have all those people that, you know, played with Ness and Luke in those games gravitating towards this game. I think a lot of this game's audience, it owes to Smash Brothers, and I think a lot of people forget that. But yeah, Earthbound. Next, another Big Chuck game, and this game, there's not much I can say about this game. It is absolutely phenomenal, and that is Chrono Trigger. The music, the story, the characters, the art style, the sprite work, the scenarios, everything about this game is done so fucking well. An absolute masterpiece, in my opinion, and I am honestly humbled to be able to hold this game and have this game in my collection. It means a lot to me, and to have it complete with like the poster and the inserts and everything. I still need to frame that poster, but it's like an awkward size, so I have to have like a poster made. But I can honestly tell you that I do not take me having this game for granted. Like, it's incredible to me that I'm able to hold a complete copy of Chrono Trigger. Like, I don't take that for granted. I don't, you know, it's incredible for me. It's not something that I take lightly, and I'm very lucky to have this game in my collection. And it's not something I have as a trophy or just to put on the wall or the shelf or just to parade in front of the camera and say, hey, you know, look what I have. That's one of the reasons I've never made a Super Nintendo collection video or wanted to, is because I don't want to come off that way. And just know that, you know, me having this game in my collection is an absolute pleasure, because I am a huge fan of the game, and I think that's what's really important with video games, and why, you know, my Super Nintendo collection is so personal to me, because these games, you know, they're not cheap, and these are all games that I'm seriously really wanted. Like, I just don't have a bunch of crap, a bunch of filler. You know, all those people that show their collection videos, like Super Nintendo videos, and they have fucking 30, 40 games that are just absolute mediocre crap. You know, if you had not bought half those games, you could have had a few fucking amazing titles instead, you know? So it's just something to think about, and something that I think about, and yeah, phenomenal game. All that said, I still think the only way to play this game is on the DS. Definitely the superior version, in my opinion. And my last two games are the two of the most sought-after games in my collection. Definitely my favorite Super Nintendo games that I have. The other really big game that I don't have is Wild Guns. That one was, when I made that initial list, Wild Guns was up at the top along with these two games, because, you know, I'm a big Natsume fan, and they are Pocky and Rocky 1 CIB and Pocky and Rocky 2 in this nice box from the Lost Gamer. So these games are the best co-op games that I own. These are super fun, super challenging. They offer a ton of replay value. They're just so much fun to play with a friend right on the couch, or even play by yourself. And the fact that they are so challenging just, you know, makes, you know, you can feel yourself getting better at these games. And when you get through, you know, maybe halfway through a level that, like, you couldn't get to before, you know, or like when you finally beat like the third or the fourth level, it's so satisfying in both these games. I tend to like playing one a little bit more than I like playing two, but they're both, you know, super challenging, super fun, control phenomenally. If you're not familiar with Pocky and Rocky, if you've ever played the game Commando on NES, it's kind of similar. It's like an overhead, like run and gun, like bird's eye view shooter. Just very, very, very good. Really cute graphics, which I think adds a lot to the appeal of the game. Good music, good characters, just really, really fun games, and definitely some of my favorite games in my collection. And, you know, when I talk about favorite games, I don't tend to talk about Pocky and Rocky so much, is because I view these as more of a co-op experience than like a game like Nier, which is, you know, by all means a very single player experience. But I see these games as more something you enjoy with someone else. But still really, really awesome games, and super lucky to have both these, especially Pocky and Rocky 2. I mean, in this condition, it's just, you know, it's a fucking beauty. It's awesome. It's kind of surreal to have these in my collection. And so that brings me to the end of the video. And if you guys made it to the end of the video, you know I like to ask some questions at the end of my video. My first question is, there is a crazy fucking story behind how I got Pocky and Rocky 2 that cost me some relationships. Actually, it cost me my relationship with a retro store that got me permanently banned from a store. So if you're interested in hearing that story, leave a comment down below and let me know. And no, I didn't steal them or something. I paid the price that they set, but in doing so, managed to get myself banned from a video game store. So if you want to know that story, leave a message down below. Maybe I'll do a story time with Crack about it. Also, I'd like to know, what is your favorite, you know, cheap game on the Super Nintendo that you think is like I was saying with Illusion I Guy, I can't believe how cheap it is. What's your favorite game that, you know, you can just go to the store and get for, you know, like 20 bucks or less, that is just awesome? And then finally, what's your favorite co-op game on the Super Nintendo? Because a lot of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo are co-op experiences. So if you guys want to answer those three questions for me, that'd be great. If you just want to answer one or none, that's cool too. Do you? But that's it. This is the video I thought I'd never make. I know it's kind of long-winded, but you know, I got a little soft on you guys because it is a little bit, you know, there's a lot of emotion in these games right here, because getting all these games was, you know, like this shit is chess, not checkers, to acquire games of, you know, such value. I don't like to talk about price, but everybody knows, unless you've been under a rock, Super Nintendo games are really expensive. So, you know, getting these was no easy feat, and I don't take it for granted. And you know, it's very important that you guys know that I did not, or it's really important for me to know that you guys know that I didn't just parade these games in front of the camera as a way to gloat. I honestly wanted to share my feelings and emotions behind these games, and that's why the video ran so long. And yeah, so yeah, got a little soft, got a little open. I apologize. I'll get back to being thugger, you know, next time. So that's it for me, guys. Crack up.